on average, students apply 3 to 6 times before ever seeing an exception letter. So if you are in the process of applying to grad school, as long as you don't give up, you will get in. Today we are talking about the exact things you should do next after receiving a rejection letter from a graduate program. And the key is to not give up. So we are going through step by step the next things you should do so you can get accepted into grad school next year. But first, we need to talk about feelings, because anytime that you receive a rejection from anywhere, you have a lot of feelings. And these feelings are often connected to fears, doubts, insecurities. And so I just wanted to say, just in case you haven't heard it yet, you are worthy. You are totally smart enough, and you totally can still get into grad school. In fact, I remember being in my master's program and talking to a PhD student who told me that on average, students apply 3 to 6 times before ever seeing an exception letter. So if you are in the process of applying to grad school, as long as you don't give up, you will get in and you can do it. Now, if you still want some time to really deal with your emotions and think about how I deal with rejection, I have a video that I'll plug at the end screen that talks all about how I deal with rejections and really working through kind of the feelings of it all. But today we aren't going to just focus on feelings. Today we're moving to action, because the goal is to change your rejection letters to exception letters. So the first thing that you need to do to make sure that you turn your rejection letter into an exception letter is to reassess the schools that you are applying to. So much of grad school is about fit. And oftentimes when we are applying to graduate programs, we don't really understand how the grad admissions program works, or how that process really evaluates who belongs there and who doesn't. And more times than not, it's not actually about who is smart and not smart, but rather whose research goals and professional hopes really align with what the school can give. So many times we may be setting up our applications and applying to the most prestigious or super cool schools that we know because it's the schools that we think are the best. But even though they're considered the best or prestigious, they may not be the best for you and your research. And even if you don't realize that, when a grad admissions committee is reviewing an application, they know what their program is about and what resources and support they can provide. So if they're reviewing your application and your research just doesn't fit with the resources or faculty that they have, or if your professional goals don't fit with the resources and faculty that they have, then they're most likely going to reject you. So it's important to rethink which schools you are applying to. And I have 2 videos that talk about how to decide which program is best for you, or what are the most important considerations when pursuing a graduate program, so you can work through and really work towards reassessing your schools. But this has to be the first step, because there may not be anything wrong with your application, and the only problem is that you're applying to schools that don't have the resources, the infrastructure, the support system to get you to where you need to go. So once you have a good idea of what schools you will continue to apply to, or what new schools you will apply to in the next cycle, you need to reassess your application. And this is important again because so much about grad school is about fit. And oftentimes when we receive a rejection from our grad institution, it is not a rejection on us or rejection of our research necessarily, but rather a rejection of our application. And an application is only a small snapshot of who we are, what we care about, and what we hope to do. And there is some good news in that, because at the end of the day, if they're just rejecting, reviewing, and approaching an application, applications can always be edited and revised. So if we look at it as not a rejection of who we are in totality or what our research is altogether, but rather as what it literally is, which is a rejection of a small bit of information, we can start to reapproach how can we reconfigure what information we privilege within our application so we can be more competitive in the next round. So what you need to do within this time of reassessing your application is to make sure, are you answering all of the questions within the application? And this isn't just kind of the most straightforward, easy questions, but really looking at the prompts and seeing, are there questions within a question? Are there things that they're mentioning that you didn't address in your application? You should also be looking if there are any optional papers or optional responses that you opted out of, but could very well apply to or add information to in your next round. Again, because an application is only a snapshot, a small bit of who we are, we want to take advantage of all the opportunities we can within your grad application to make yourself or to share your full story to the grad admissions committee. And so you don't want to miss out on answering questions that they're asking within the prompt, and you don't want to miss out on optional options or extra options to fuller expand on who you are, what you're about, what your research about, or why you're picking this institution. Also, I think it's very important to say so much of grad school is about writing. So all aspects of your application, anytime that you find yourself writing, you are being evaluated on your writing skills. So you want to make sure that you are looking through your application with a fine-tooth comb. Are you creating, grammatical errors? Are your sentences concise and confident? Are you demonstrating that you belong or that you feel like you belong? Or do you write in a lot of doubt or questions or concerns? And an example of this is if you are answering a prompt, are you really showing what you feel about this prompt or what your background or how your background answered this prompt? Or are you answering the prompt with more questions? Are you using words that are very vague, like some would suggest, or I don't know, or perhaps one would? You don't need all of that filler jargon. You want to be able to demonstrate that you are concise, that you are confident, and that you know what they're talking about and have some background information. Even if the question is, tell me about yourself, you want to confidently tell them about yourself. So it's important to see your writing not just as answering the question, but as demonstrating that you have the technical skills of writing. So many people that get into grad school do so with a little bit of help from others. And these others could be friends, families, resources from their undergrad, or from other graduate students that they know. And so independent of who you know or what resources you have, you should feel like you can find somebody, be it at your university or your undergraduate campus, be it at your job, or somebody that you just know, to give you a second pair of eyes. And this again can help you figure out, are you answering the questions? Or, is the grammar okay? Or do you sound confident? Any person, we call them any lay person, can read an article or read a paper and see, oh, this seems like you don't know what you're talking about, or this seems like you really are passionate about these things. And so by having somebody that is outside of you read over your application, it can help you really hone in or focus on the areas where you could improve and the areas that you are doing really, really well. So the person that helps you or the people that help you don't necessarily have to be academics or people from your career center, though they totally can be. And I would suggest, if you have that resource, to use it as much as possible. But they can also be your friends. They can be your community members. The point of having other people look over your paper is to make sure that you are presenting the most important information, and not in some weird, heady, jargony way, or in a way that sounds like you're trying to sound academic, but rather in a very concise and clear manner. And if you're writing concisely, if you're writing clearly, then anybody should be able to read your application and understand what you're trying to do with it. I would also suggest that you ask for feedback from the places that you applied to and received rejection letters. Now, most universities or schools that are accepting graduate students but don't want to give feedback will say somewhere in their website explicitly, we are unable to provide individual feedback, or we won't be responding to concerns. But unless you see that explicitly, then I think it's fair to reach out to the admissions committee or the contact information when you are applying to ask for feedback on your application, so you can take that feedback and apply it to your application for the next cycle. And this again is important because you can start to see, is it, formulaic things that I can change, like how confidently I'm speaking or how I'm structuring my personal statement, or is it that I just wasn't a good fit for their program? And with that information, you can again start to think about where and how you're going to apply next year. Now, if you do reach out and they don't respond, or you did apply to one of those schools that do not provide feedback, another option is you can reach out to current graduate students at the department or in the department that you're interested in. Now, I would not suggest that you would come and be pushy or entitled when you're sending these emails. I also would not suggest that you email everybody on the website, but instead pick maybe one or two people and ask if they'd be willing to either look over your application, maybe do a Zoom meeting or a phone call to talk about next year's application, or even if you build a relationship with them and talk to them, to see what their application looked like. Now, again, this is very particular about who you reach out to and kind of the culture of the department, and you do not want to be pushy or entitled. I cannot stress that enough. But by trying to reach out and be very polite and ask for help, many graduate students that are in the program, both new and veteran students, may be willing to help you prepare for the next cycle or give you some insight of what the department is looking for specifically. And say all of these things just are not an option for you. You don't have friends or family or resources from your old campus, you don't have a school that you can contact, and none of the graduate students responded to you. Then the next best thing is to continue looking through the internet for resources. And this could be through blogs. I have an entire grad admissions playlist that you can find at the end screen of this video so you can continue learning and preparing. And there's even other YouTubers like the Redhead Academic that does consultations to help students prepare and revise and work on their applications so they can be competitive every time that they apply. But the most important thing is to remember, asking for help is a strong strategy to prepare for the next cycle. Doing it all on your own can be very difficult, and sometimes it's hard to see outside of yourself of where your mistakes are or areas where you can improve. And it can be from little details to really big conceptual ideas. So having as much support and help as you can will guide you towards your acceptance letter that you've been dreaming of. Now, once you've completed all the previous things, then the next thing that you need to do is make the necessary changes. Now that you've reassessed your schools, thought about your application, got feedback and insight from others outside of yourselves, it is important that you make the necessary changes. Don't just hear it and feel, that you have to stick by your application, but really take that information to heart and work towards revising and editing your paper. And it's important to start as soon as you can, because then you can always go through the process of having others look it over, getting feedback from colleagues or friends and families, so you can continue to craft and refine your application every step of the way. So when the time comes to submit your application, you feel more confident and prepared than you ever have before. But in the meantime, I would suggest that you look at my grad admissions playlist. And if you're somebody really thinking about your personal statement, I would check out my video on how to write a personal statement. If you found at least 2 things useful, definitely hit a thumbs up so others know that this is a good quality video and YouTube empowers themselves to share this video with those who may need it. And as always, your support, your likes, your comments, your subscriptions help a small YouTuber like me continue to grow. So I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.